Hey.
So, got a lot of visitors. They may not have ever heard this before, but the induction to Oldham County's Hall of Fame it got canceled on Friday, got moved to Saturday. And I'm one of the inductees to the Oldham County High School Hall of Fame. And I really do appreciate that. And we beat Shelby County also 17-16. And so that's happy buck number one. Happy buck number two, my grandson is the starting quarterback for the JV team. And they beat Fern Creek last night. We've already beat Shelby County JV team. And we beat Fern Creek last night. That's another half.
Picture of you taking it.
Oh, wow. Thank you, Donna. Tough start to the month.
For those of you who do not know, Oldham County High School just built a brand new field, and Oldham County won their very first game on their new field. Yes.
And I'll tell you, Steve, when I walked out on that, it is so different. It's so cushiony. It's so different than the old AstroTurf type mentality.
Really?
It's really
Wow, that's great. Happy Bucks. Any more? Yes, ma'am.
And some of you are not 39 yet, but anyway.
Birthdays, we'll dispense with that because I think we've got everybody covered for August. So, Matt, if you don't mind, let's move on. Okay.
We have two things we want to give, money we want to give away.
All right.
Money.
All right.
Blaine, you got one of the money check?
Yep.
I'm going to do my check first.
All right.
I'll let you do it. And one of the things that was really great is when we reached out to Sourbeck to try to host a night for the Sound of Freedom, he gave us 90 tickets as a part of that. Okay, 90 tickets for us to give away, and then the family, the drive-in, doubled that just out of as a gift. And so I just wanted to make that note. I know that Stephen he wants the drive-in to be a part of this community, and I really appreciate what you did. And we're going to pay you now. Please come up. We promised we'd pay you Friday night, and we forgot. And so I'm paying you now because we owe you this. But I want to thank you for all you did to get the word out.
Thank you, Steve.
All right. When you become a Rotarian, you learn about our motto, service above self. And we exemplify this through our actions within the community, state, and internationally. Most recently, this was through volunteering at the parking gate at the Oldham County Fair. For the past 2 years, and with the approval of the Fair Board, we have taken the opportunity to also collect donations from the attendees. Last year, we raised $2,250, and that was in support of Eastern Kentucky flood relief. This year, we saw this as an opportunity to help a fellow Oldham Countyan. The word serve is also a key word used by the men and women who serve and protect every time they put on their uniform. This brings us to today's presentation. Oldham Countyan Nick Wilt graduated from the Police Academy on March 31st of this year. While working just his 4th shift on April 10th at 8:41 a.m., he and his partner were confronted by someone with evil in their heart. On that morning, his life and the lives of many other families would be changed forever. Officer Wilt did not hesitate to rush to the scene to try to save lives, but was immediately met with gunfire, with one bullet striking him in the head. But this story is about a fighting spirit and the will to never give up. Nick was able to return home in July, but continues to go through intense physical, occupational, speech, and cognitive therapy. As a matter of fact, he is at therapy as we speak right now. His approach to therapy is using his catchphrase, let's boogie woogie. He wants to get it done. In exchanging messages with his brother Alex over the last 24 hours, he first and foremost wants to pass along Nick and their family's thanks for the ongoing prayers and support. Alex stated that Nick is, quote, working hard in therapy towards his goals, with his main goal of being able to walk again, unquote. Yesterday, the Muhammad Ali Center announced the recipients of the 2023 Muhammad Ali Humanitarian Awards, and among them is Nick Wilt, who will be receiving this year's Kentuckian of the Year Award. The center said he is receiving the award because he was motivated to join LMPD to serve and protect his community while educating and providing aid to those in need. Today, we are honored to have Rebecca from the Louisville Metro Police Foundation here with us. We are pleased to announce that donations were raised in several ways. Snappy Tomato, again, James in the back here, Snappy Tomato Pizza had a special day honoring Nick and donated a portion of their sales, which raised $600. The Rotarians working at the parking gate during the Oldham County Fair raised over $2,500, while an additional donation table, at the music tent inside of the fair raised an additional $2,400. So with that, I'm going to invite Rebecca and James, and I think we've got some folks in the fair here. Isn't there some? Nope. Okay. If you folks will come forward, because we would like to present a check to the Louisville Metro Police Foundation. We will be presenting this to Rebecca, but she will be ultimately getting this to Nick, and this will be a check for $5,500. So Rebecca, our thoughts and prayers continue to go out to Nick and to all officers and first responders. Let's have a big hand for them. The local paper, they always want a photo of.
Speaks loud everywhere.
Yeah, jump in, Sheriff. You're part of the All right. I've asked Rebecca if she'd like to say a few words.
Sorry. Thank you all so very much for doing this for Nick and for his family. The Louisville Metro Police Foundation was started after the line of duty death of my husband, Officer Peter Grignon. And from experience, I can tell you that this money will make a huge difference practically, but it will make an even bigger difference emotionally and mentally. To know now, to receive this money now, months after the incident, lets them know that they are still surrounded by people that appreciate his sacrifice, that still love him, that still pray for him. And I just want to tell you what a difference that you are making. I know you probably know that because you do so many good things, but you have impacted this family. When they are laying awake at night wondering if anybody cares, they're going to think of you. So thank you so much for allowing us to partner with you. And you guys are awesome. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to introduce our speakers at this point. Excuse me, at this point. So I'm going to let Al do that and have at it.
Thank you, Steve.
Boogie woogie.
So we want to jump right in. We've got a lot of things to cover today. We have two speakers. We have our dear friends of mine. I think the world of them, and I love their fight. And I pray for them and encourage them in any way I can. The first person I want to introduce is Carissa Sipes. Carissa works for Southeast Christian in the anti-trafficking efforts there. Carissa leads a care team that serves survivors of trafficking near Louisville, Kentucky. Her team also provides various kinds of support for missions partners, nonprofits, and community agencies in nearby counties. With her is a lifelong friend, John Stewart. John is an award-winning registered architect, licensed contractor, and licensed authority in many different industries across the United States, Canada, Aruba, and Jamaica. He founded Encompass Development, Design, and Construct, LLC in 1999, and his offices are in LaGrange. John's experience includes project development, in industries including hospitality and gaming, restaurant
What?
and food service, retail,
I got
healthcare,
Rotary
government,
up.
religious, and manufacturing.
Clicked right on it. It
That's a
came
few
on.
of, I'm going to stop there, all right? Because I really want to hear what you all have to say. So please welcome Carissa and John.
Have to bring this way down. Hi, I'm really glad to be with you all, and it's fun always for me to get to be with John because we usually just work together and volunteer and serving capacity, so it's a little fun to do something different. I'm going to just talk a few minutes about what I know about human trafficking locally. Also, that was kind of the interest of this group, so I hope this is helpful to you today, and then we'll leave some time for question and answers after John talks. First, I just want to explain what human trafficking is. I think a lot of us see things on TV and we see ads or we see commercials or even movies about human trafficking. And often those are not accurate at all. And we believe it's happening in other countries or that people are being brought here, which is true. But I want to just talk about America a little bit and specifically Kentucky. But human trafficking is the exploitation of another person for the purpose of forced labor or sex by force, fraud, or coercion, which makes it modern day slavery, which is a mouthful, but basically it's holding a person against their will and exploiting them in their vulnerabilities to make money off of them for labor or sex. In Kentucky, we have seen in the last, this is my associate Melissa, and we have worked for the last 5 years or so in this area, and we have now around 200 victims and survivors that we have worked with. So, and that's just the two of us with our small little team. So what we could do if there were a lot more of us who actually understood and were educated in the area of human trafficking would be amazing. Let me tell you just a couple stats about Kentucky that honestly, my husband always says, can you make this fun? And I'm like, no, you can't. You cannot make sex trafficking, I mean, anti-sex trafficking fun at all. It's a very serious issue. It's a $150 billion business. That's more than Nike and Starbucks combined. It is, let me just give a few things. There are currently 88 websites. I mean, right now, today, with over 1,000 ads a day that are putting out solicitations for just this area. We have a detective that we work with, and he will send us updates of the women who are posting in specifically Oldham County. And just last week, we had 7 women that we were watching for. So it's very local. A lot of it is online. But Kentucky ranks very high in a lot of areas that, sad to say, I think because human trafficking is so underground and so secretive, and because it is a criminal, it's a fast-growing criminal enterprise, a lot of us don't want to talk about these stats, but Kentucky is ranked #1 in child abuse and has been in the top 10 for the last decade. Is ranked #2 in overdoses. It is ranked #4 in overdose deaths, and is ranked #9 in human trafficking. So when people say, well, that's not really a Kentucky issue or we don't have that problem, I always think, well, it's just because it's hidden. It's the most hidden crime that's in plain sight. And so much of it begins online with, it kills me that we're in this building because I'm like, I want the students in here because it begins with 11 to 13-year-olds. They're the most vulnerable and the most preyed upon in our society when it comes to human trafficking. They're easy to spot, a lot easier to spot, I think, than we realize. People who are potential victims. Melissa and I now, we can walk into a lot of places and almost pick out who a trafficker would be looking for. They're looking for a lot of homes of single mamas. They're looking for a lot of children who are not being accounted for in any, not just in any public place, but even in their home or their neighborhood. And the kidnapping, they don't need to do that. They don't need to pull up a van and snatch your kid. They can get them online. So often those movies are not, while they maybe portray a very small percentage, they're not accurate of how our children are being groomed. It's online extensively. Do you want me to tell a story and then you go? Is that okay? I'll just tell you real quick about two things locally, and they both happened in the Cherrywood neighborhood. And if you live in Cherrywood, sorry. It's a great middle-class neighborhood with a lot of families. But one was a very publicized human trafficking case that you may have heard of or seen with the Jumbo Buffet. A detective friend of ours was very involved in that. That was about a 2.5-year case that he worked to try to find all the one-offs for that case. And then another case was just a home where a woman was being sold out of her home by her family. 48% of sex trafficking cases are done by a family member or someone in the household. So often in schools, it gets missed because the child maybe who is suffering, or even the adult who is suffering. I don't want to, children being trafficked is obviously a huge issue and we all have a heart for that, but there are so many adults who get missed. But often a teacher, an educator, a hospital worker, even a dental assistant will call in the family. And in 48% of those cases, it is a family member. So you can imagine how complicated it is to try to sort through who is a victim and what is happening when it comes from the actual household. But that case in Cherrywood, while not publicized or even prosecuted, was far-reaching for a lot of families in our county. And so I just would encourage you, especially with this limited time, I would love to get up here and talk about victimology and vulnerabilities in people and how people are being trafficked. But I would encourage you just to get some education. I brought a little fact sheet with me and begin to dig in so that your eyes are opened. So much of trafficking goes undetected because so many of us don't know what we're looking at. And we believe what we see in the movies or on TV as the way that it happens, which is a great smokescreen for traffickers, because they think we're looking for white vans and people jumping out and snagging kids. And the truth is they're online, or they're even working in families quite often to, what's the word? I can't think of the right word, but they're manipulate. That's a great word. Yeah, manipulation is a huge part of this, to manipulate victims. So if you have questions, I'd love to answer some questions. Read over that fact sheet and then pray. That's our best weapon. So ask the Lord. And then, yeah, just believe it to be true, as dark as it is, that is the world we live in, and there's a fight to join, and it works. I mean, the fighting back works, and John and I are just two little pieces of that. Go ahead.
Thanks, Chris. And she's not a little piece of this. She's a big piece of this, even though she's a little. I lived in a bubble. I mean, I grew up here in this county, and a few years ago, Chris's husband and I were having lunch, and he was telling me about this trip that Chris had just taken, and that really impacted her. And she'd gone up to Baltimore and met with this organization, had a emergency home for women who had been trafficked. And he told me a little bit of the story, and I was like, oh, well, it's another thing that, you know, my pastor and his wife are going to get into. We're just buddies hanging out, talking. He said, I think really though, that there's going to be a big movement here in LaGrange. And I said, well, I'm along for the ride. So, and literally along for the ride, Chris and I went back up to Baltimore and met with an organization called the Samaritan Women. It's now called the Institute for Shelter Care. And ended up somehow, I get into these things, end up on the board and in Baltimore. And then so the organization moved to Louisville. And the founder of that organization lives 4 doors from me now. So God will just open those doors sometimes for you when he wants you in this. And every time that I heard another story or met another person who had been trafficked, or understood a little bit about what Carissa was talking about, how I have 3 granddaughters now, and I'm scared to death for these girls that, you know, and they, 2 of them have phones. And, but I understood, well, I still thought, but it doesn't really happen here. It doesn't happen in LaGrange. So I was in my backyard last summer, and my neighbor stopped by. And my neighbor had, every now and then he would stop by, and he'd bring me, like, you know, the about to expire ribs at Kroger, you know, and he'd always buy them for me because he always saw me out in my yard smoking. But I was working in the garden, and he stopped by and he said, "Hey, John, come here. I want to talk to you." So he drove up in his van, and he had a hard time walking, and so he didn't wear shoes. So he walked over, and we sat down on my back porch. And I said, "What's up?" And he goes, "Well," and he pulled $100 bill out of his pocket and he handed it to me. I said, "What's this for?" And I'm not saying his name because you may know him, but I should say his name and write it on a big billboard. But he said, "Well, you know how you're always talking to me about, stop talking about pornography and those kids, and whenever I'm talking to you." And he said, "Well, I was just with a little girl at my house, and she was taking her clothes off. And he said, you popped in my head. What you had said to me just popped in my head. And I turned to her, told her to put her clothes back on. And she goes, no, I want my money. I have to have my money." And he said, well, I'm taking, put your clothes back on. I'll give you your money. I'm taking you home to your mama." 3 things. There was, it's a little girl, which means, and this guy was in his 50s, so I'm not sure exactly how old she was, but he called her a little girl. Her mother, this is what Carissa said, her mother was trafficking her. Her mother was selling her. I live in LaGrange, y'all. I live in LaGrange, right on 146, Maple Court. I can see my neighbor's house from there. And he said, I took her home to her mama. And I decided that every time I do this from now on, I'm going to come bring you the money so you can fight the guys like me. And I told him, I said, I really, really hope you never bring me another dime, because we don't need that kind of money knowing that that's what you're doing. But the bubble burst, and all of a sudden these other stories kept coming in. So right in LaGrange, there's a mother trafficking her daughter, selling her to a 55-year-old man that lives 2 doors from me. And if you don't believe it happens in your neighborhood, that what Krista said, what we want to do, what we're trying to do is help people see what is it that we're looking for. We're not always looking for that pimp riding in that cool or kind of cool car riding downtown with a bunch of girls in his car. We're looking for families and people that are selling their kids because they need drug money to keep their habits going. We work with a group called Love City. It's in Portland, and see this a lot in the Portland area. A lot of the kids that are going to their school and their daycare program or after school care program go home, and they're orphans. They live in a home with a parent, but they're orphans because their parents, the only thing that their parent has them there for is because they can get another check or they can sell them as well. So this stuff is real. I tell these stories not to impact you or make you feel sad about it, but to say this is real. It's happening here in our community. And I'm, as Al said, we got a few of our F3 buddies here, and he was talking about their names. But one of the things that I think that I'm going to talk to the men for just a minute, okay? I'm just sorry about the microphone. Men, if you look at pornography, stop. I'm just telling you, just stop, because that's the first thing that men do, and then they need more. They need more, and talk about it with other people. We seriously, I was embarrassed to talk about this because number one, I didn't know much about it, but if you hear people talking, my neighbor, hoping that he stopped, he doesn't live there anymore. His wife passed away. Oh yes, he was married. He was married too. But my neighbor, his house was abandoned. I hope he's in jail somewhere. We can say that, but he punished for that. the men talk to other men about this. That's the first thing we can do. Talk about it. Talk about that it's real. This is real. And when you see a young lady who's not dressed like we would like to dress our granddaughters, our daughters, or being an aunt or uncle, that we would like to do that. Say something to the parents. Don't be embarrassed to say something to them. So my daughter, who's in the Marine Corps, she has a thing on her phone that she can see anything that granddaughters have on it. Did anybody else have that with their kids? Yeah, I don't remember what the program's called. It's like a mirroring thing. But do that. Don't be embarrassed to be a parent or a grandparent. Step up and do those things. I'm out here talking to the men first because I know, and in this men's group that we're in, I know that's where a lot of it starts. Be a father, be a husband, be there for your spouse as well. Looking at those pictures, looking at those movies does nothing but promote that industry. How many billion? Or $150 billion industry trafficking. So I'm here just to share that and answer any questions that you might have. There's a lot of stories we could tell. We have a big need right now for housing for women in Kentucky. That we have one home in Kentucky right now for women who have been trafficked, and we're working real hard to try to make that change that. We actually have. I'm going to tell you one more story. One more story. Okay, so I got this phone call from the Best Western. You might know the Best Western Hotel, from a lady managing the Best Western. She called and said, hey, I'd like to show you the hotel. So when you have out-of-town guests, you have them stay here. And I thought, oh, another marketing call. Don't really have time. And I thought, wait a second, what's this industry that I'm in? I'm in the hospitality industry, and I know what goes on in hotels. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to share something with her. So I went and we sat down, and she gave me a tour of the Best Western. If you haven't been there, they remodeled everything. It was pretty nice. So another family bought it, and I sat down with her, this young lady who was in college at the time. I think she was 24. And we started talking. I said, do you know anything about trafficking? She goes, oh yeah, this place has been known for that. We had a desk manager that was still here when we bought the property, and people were coming in looking for him, and that's what they were looking for. Yes, in LaGrange, Best Western, the Drury, what is it called? Drury Inn. Yeah, was known for trafficking. I didn't know that. I live in a bubble, but when the bubble burst, then I know more about it. So now we're partners. Now, when Carissa or Melissa have somebody that needs a place to stay for the night because they said, I don't want this anymore, and they need to escape. Guess what? We got a hotel group in this city now that will house people for us, and we've become friends with them. The Oldham County Tourism got a meeting together for all of us, for Airbnb owners, for hotel owners. We had a great meeting to talk about how we can work as a community to provide that housing. Now, hotel is not necessarily the best place for some of these ladies to go that first night. So we're also renting apartments. Now, if you have an Airbnb at your apartment, it's empty, we'd love to have an opportunity to have those for an emergency space. So you can help in a lot of different ways, and we'll answer any questions about that too. We want to leave time too for our next speaker, who will be a lot more exciting than we are. But
any questions for Chris and John?
Nick.
How can we just I don't know, how can we plug in both financially and like actually?
Go ahead. Yeah.
So specifically, there's 3 buckets that people can be involved in. One is like missions, nonprofits. We work a lot with missions partners, even Crossroads. Some of our folks would cross paths a lot of times. And then we also we work with community agencies like law enforcement, FBI, HSI, some of those organizations. And then we just work with victims and survivors. So really, it's slow work. But we talk with people usually one at a time and just say, how has God wired you? What are you being called to do? What areas would you like to serve in, and what kind of expertise do you have? And that can be any kind of expertise. A lot of folks think they can't get involved. I think Jason will probably share a little bit about even how he's been involved in something that would be totally unusual for a business to be involved in, and yet they've been a huge asset. And John is the same way. I mean, even as an architect, he has had a huge piece in helping us provide housing and working with some of these agencies. So it really depends on the person. Financially, there are organizations, missions organizations, Jason's organization that you can give to support the work, and you really just need a list and time to look at their websites and decide what you want to do. But there's plenty of places. Yeah.
I will give a plug to the Institute for Shelter Care. So we provide curriculum for homes so that there's kind of a standard of care, and that what we've learned about trauma-informed care and trauma-informed design, we can share those resources across the different homes that are around the country. We've been working with homes like Refuge for Women and others, but that's another way to get involved, is we can put you directly in contact with those folks that are at those organizations. There's another one for children here called Safe Passage. My wife's a mentor. She has a mentee, that a 12-year-old little girl who's in a tough spot, and her sisters also have mentors, and that's been a great place for somebody to plug in, walk alongside a young lady who's that vulnerable young lady, and be able to, the girls that she's mentoring, they had never been out of Carroll County ever in their lives. 12 years old, took them to a main event, and she says, just amazing. So it's a blessing for them as well. But just walk alongside them, knowing what they could be facing. So, and you get training on that too. We have a great friend who's a nurse, has a lot of influence over nursing, and has changed the way that Baptist hospitals look at somebody that's come in, that's a lady that maybe looked like she may have been abused or something. They have a whole program now to determine whether or not they're being trafficked. Really lots of opportunities.
What is the penalties for a trafficker that, say, a fellow that's caught doing this and?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what? We'll turn it over. That's a law enforcement question. So we'll turn it over to Jason, and he'll be able to talk a little more about that too. But that's a good question.
We know what we'd like to do with it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
So
Thank
Jason
you very
Mosley
much.
has 11 years of law enforcement experience. He's a tactical operator on the Louisville Metro Police Department SWAT team. While he was on the SWAT team, he investigated violent crime, narcotics as a detective, a major crimes detective in the Special Victims Unit, and he focused there on sex crimes, domestic violence, human trafficking, sex offenders, and crimes against children and physical assaults on senior citizens. He has, after leaving Louisville Metro Police Department, he has become one of the investigators for the Slavery No More, and he works in the special victims related cases there, experienced trials and operations on a local, state, and federal level, including detecting, surveilling, investigating, working in an undercover capacity for and with the FBI and other national agencies. Please welcome Jason Mosley.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it. Man, I'll start off saying, it's like Carissa said, that the buckets to do this, it takes a village. And, just the connections of different people. Rosemary's nephew was one of my old partners, and I worked violent crime, and the connection was there. But what I've learned about the Rotary Club is, man, just how big you guys are and how you network and work together. And that's a powerful thing and a force to be reckoned with, and can make a big, big difference. So, I want to be respectful of time with everybody and today. And man, it is really, really tough to try to nail down all the different things. So bear with me. I'm gonna skip around a
I'm
little
gonna
bit.
say it again.
Yeah.
You have to leave it one, I didn't put it. But we understand time limitations. We also have time to share some of his insights on the larger national transform. So please, note that. Jason, let's know what you got.
Appreciate that. A couple things I want to kind of overview of is, you know, how did we get here? Where is this problem? Why do we have this problem? Why are we not fixing it? And at times it's emotion, right? And you want to kind of point the finger and go, why isn't, you know, this part doing their job? And well, what's going on with, you know, aftercare? What's going on with law enforcement? And one thing that I think we can all agree on in this room is we cannot do it without God in the center. You just can't. It's a dark, dark, evil thing. And man, the obstacles that you will go up against doing this, God has to be in the center of it. Just has to be. So there are so many parts of this. You know, and obviously there's things we can work on and do better. There's things that we need, but you know, I'm here to tell you my experiences of things that I've seen and hoping we can, you know, as a community, just kind of, you know, overcome this thing. And I know with folks like you guys, with God in the center, it can happen. So that's important. Reason through a couple things, you know, just quickly from a law enforcement standpoint, just as Carissa said, a 2-year investigation. The reality is this: their law enforcement cannot do it alone. We often talk about law enforcement bridging the gap between the community and working together, and that is a much needed thing because, you know, law enforcement. If you think of how many people, you know, are in Louisville or Oldham County, and how many people are physically working on a shift on the street, and how many hours they put in, it's just not that easy. And it's just not. I mean, if you have some of these you know, patrol guys are wearing, you know, several different hats. They are an investigator of a serious car collision, a domestic violence scene. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And with working human trafficking, it is a long, complex thing. It takes time. It takes a lot of time. And you run into obstacles that I want to be able to share a little bit with you so you kind of understand is, you know, these kiddos, a lot of them didn't get here overnight. They were dealt a really bad hand. They're in a bad spot. So it takes a lot. So folks like Carissa there's such a need for that. It's not even funny, you know, because they need to heal. They need to go through a process where they are comfortable because, and I don't want to be rude and crude, but I'm going to tell you a few little stories, and some of them are kind of dark. One of the first trafficking cases that I went on was a dad is in and out of this daughter's life. He calls middle of the night and he's bawling. You know, show up at a Red Roof Inn. 2 12-year-old girls passed out in the hotel room, used condoms, weed, pills, and these kids are just exhausted. They have just been used and abused by, you know, just a lot of horrible people, to be frank. And I remember, you know, my first thought was like, you know, as a father, you know, I'm like, come, I'm going to help you. And this little girl stood up, God love her. She threw a used condom at me and said, I don't want your help. A lot of other choice words. Point being is, for one, if they're not ready to report, law enforcement, they can't say, you're going to report whether you like it or not. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So it takes time. What do you do then? You know, maybe they're in a spot to where they've had a bad run-in with the police and it takes time. So they need to heal, and it takes time to heal. Hopefully, God willing, they get to a point where they're ready to heal, and then they want to talk and turn this over to law enforcement. And sometimes you have to be okay with, this is why I say God in the center is what are we looking to do here as a whole? Ask yourself this question when you want to help out with whatever bucket you're in. Is some of my most rewarding work I got to do was ones that never even seen a courtroom. And a little girl that she was convinced because she was groomed that, you know, 3 days before her 18th birthday, she was going to go live with this guy and life was going to be good. And the reality was she was not in a place to report and she was about to be in the wind, gone forever. We're able to locate her just long enough to dad to go down to get her. They held her for a day. She was a juvenile for a day. Took her out to California, went through rehab, folks like Carissa that and her team and got her in a better place. But it may not ever see the light of day in a courtroom. It's all about leaving the 99 to find the one, right? So it's important. It really is. So a couple things I kind of want to go through what we do, and just we are a small sliver compared to all the different buckets, because it takes a village. It takes an army of God's people to do the work. So bear with me. I'm gonna skip around a little bit and kind of breeze through of it if I can. Hopefully it'll reach from here. We'll see. There we go. All this Carissa just covered. I don't want to bore you guys to death by PowerPoint with slides. You can easily look a lot of this stuff up. It's not hard to do. The difference, you can look that up. This is kind of a quick overview that you can look these things up, the difference between the two. Now, if you want to learn more and you want to go in depth, like I said, I'm sure we can have an in-depth conversation on education behind what it is and what it isn't. Again, things that we've already kind of covered. All the different things and ways traffickers try to groom them and do things. These are all things, again, online. I'm kind of breezing through just due to time, and I want to give you guys a chance to talk as well. Do we or do we not have agriculture and tobacco fields and corn and everything else? Just understand that, unfortunately, there are times where there is labor trafficking. There are people that are sold the American dream to come here, and it's not that when they get here. It's not that at all. And you never know it. And there's just, you can just Google it, and I'm sure 100 cases will pull up of examples. Again, we kind of went over the laws, skipped through some of this. Where do you see it? Kind of an overview. You quickly glance through it, it's literally everywhere. It's all around you. What traffickers look like. Somebody mentioned a good point. John, I think it was Carroll County. I had a little girl that was she was troubled in and out. Mom and dad said, I'm done. I can't deal with her, whatever the reason was. They thought they'd send her to Louisville, change up her location, then she wouldn't know where she was at. No, that didn't work. It was down close to a biker club, and what they were doing is picking off kids. They were picking them off from a group home, luring them in, and then exchanging drugs and guns for the children. So it can look like a cartel. It can look like a biker. These are people that stand out. It's kind of like the white man thing. Can it happen? Yes. But do you expect to see this little girl as a trafficker? The reality is that can really happen. And sometimes they're in a survival spot to where they have no choice. It's their life or someone else's, and they get put in a really bad spot. So there are times where they will send out other children to lure in other children to traffic them. It happens. Or you get this gentleman who is labor trafficking, taking advantage of people in their situations coming into the country. Why human trafficking? Why is it on the rise? Think about it. If with drugs, you have to re-up, right? You have to re-up it, you have to smuggle it, you have to hide it, you have to do all these things. You don't have to do that with a victim. You can sell them over and over and over and over. They're hidden, as she said, hidden in plain sight. Who do they target? These are the statistics that you can look up online. As Chris alluded to, again, is #1 in the nation for child abuse. I'll give you a couple quick things just to kind of what traffickers kind of prey on. Kids that are in a bad situation, or adults, people that are they're in a vulnerable situation in their life. So child abuse obviously being one of them. We have 3 of the poorest counties in the country, and they bring them to big events. What is 2 events that never moved? Super Bowl, Major League, Finals, NBA, all that stuff moves around city to city. What state has 2 of the largest events in the country that never move? and the National Farm Machinery Show, exactly. So we have this stuff coming to us whether we like it or not. They bring it to us. It may not always happen, start out here, but it's believed. UPS is what the major place right here is their main hub. 65 corridor, man, people blow through here, and so do traffickers, unfortunately, the victims. And again, some of these statistics, it's crazy to think, but you know, we've had some below freezing weather, right? They're out, they're about. You see a kid that's a runaway, freeze to death or jump in the car. Sometimes in these are situations. These folks are now, you know, these are adults, but I'm gonna be real with you so it hits home. Some of these folks are from right here. They went to school, maybe not in Oldham County, but are right here. Right here. And some of this, I'll be honest with you, I didn't plan on this, but what we do is an extension to law enforcement. I literally had a call yesterday and I'm like, oh, hey, I'm going to prep yesterday and get everything ready for today. And we got a call that there was a couple women from South America that were being trafficked down in Alabama and then quickly were brought up to Nashville. So I literally drove home this morning from working from yesterday. So bear with me. Some of this is for different folks, from nurses to doctors to law enforcement, et cetera. So it was thrown together a little quickly, just to be honest with you. These are things we'll kind of blow through. I want to be, like I said, this is more of the meat and potatoes of it all. I mean, obviously we could have sessions where we can go through all the things, but the biggest thing is look for the signs. And the same thing as drug use, right? Drug use or domestic violence, things like that. Look for the signs of it, because those same folks are the same folks that can easily be trafficked. Now there's things of signs, and sorry, I know some of it's going a little rude and crude to see, but the reality is it's the mental game for some of these traffickers. They brand these folks. They brand them. They'll do things like that to them to show, hey, I own you. This young lady right here, you can't really see it on her chest in the cursive in the red, but it says loyalty. And that's just something that they put in their head. Hey, loyalty to me, loyalty to the pimp, to the trafficker. I own you, you're loyal to me. So it's a psychological thing. And it takes, I mean, just to be honest, it does. It takes people like Carissa and their team to break that. And that doesn't happen overnight. And understand this too, as men, that we may not be the best one. There's so many buckets and things you can do to help, but don't get offended if it's not aftercare for you. It may not, but you've got to understand that most men in their lives have wanted something or abused them every time they were nice. So you have to know or check yourself and know that, hey, this may not be my lane. This may be somebody else that needs to walk with them and help them restore and rehabilitate, right? This is one I saw on the way back from the airport. Maybe it's trafficking, maybe it's not, but the signs are kind of somewhat there. You can see she's kind of not, you can't tell, but when she stands up, her clothes look like they haven't been washed in a while. They don't match each other, right? He's got on really expensive shoes. He looks very clean. Hygiene's good. Hers is not. She's got some really just huge tattoos that are not something that you'd see on the average, right? They just kind of stand out. We've all seen tattoos, but some of them just kind of stand out a little more, right? Looks a little more out of the ordinary. Emotional state. These are all things that, you know, we have so much to talk about. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but one that was really good is Soft White Underbelly. If you look them up on YouTube, man, they interview everybody from traffickers to victims to people that have crazy fetishes all across the world, across the country. But one of them, a pimp had said on there, it was really interesting to me. It says, promise them heaven, they'll follow you to hell. That's alarming. Things to look for, you see them just quickly, multiple cell phones, key cards, you know, things of that nature. You know, these little gift cards, they have hotel room keys, they have all their stuff on their back. I mean, these are things that, you're not gonna do. It's one thing if you go on a date with your wife and she says, hey, can you hold my ID and put it in your pockets, so I don't have to carry all this stuff? It's another thing when this guy's got her birth certificate and all of her stuff. That's not something you'd always carry around, right? So things, if you see something, you know to say something, right? And obviously the last one. This is more aligned with the healthcare field, but like we said with nurses, you have people, if you hear something in earshot, think about it. What are they talking about? What are they saying? What's going on with their life? Another thing I'd like to point out from the healthcare side, a lot of people don't know from working special victims unit is how many people knew this. I was shocked when I first heard this, is that, kiddos can't consent to certain things, right? Because they're children, right? The little prefrontal cortex of their brains, they can't consent to these things. They can't make those educated decisions. But when it comes to some people refer to as a rape kit, sexual assault nurse examination, they can deny it. So that was issues that we ran into. So talking to the right folks of, you have a 12-year-old daughter that's maybe not in the right mental space, and she's like, but I love him. And he's 40 years old, and she's there at the hospital, they can deny that SANE exam. So, that makes it extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. How do you go after forensic DNA when it's her word against her or his, or they both deny it? You can't deny that forensic DNA, right? And that is a problem to where a parent can't even say, while you're testing her, swabbing her to make sure she doesn't have a, STI or STD or whatever you want to call it. What's to say you take that, you take it to the Kentucky State Police Laboratory, you run it in CODIS, Combined Offender DNA Index System, for people that are offenders, and you say, wow, your DNA is present in an exam from a child, but they can deny that. That's an issue. It's something that, again, connections with more people to change those things, right? This is kind of an overview from a past investigation, but I point this out. What's cool about it, as Carissa said, is Southeast is my church. I'm very proud. And one thing that I love that Carissa's put together is put together a whole group of people that just want to help. Long story short, had a guy respond, and it's just a God thing. The replies all on an email. I have no clue what this guy does, but you go forward and then you start learning what people can do. This guy is a GIS mapping tech wizard. So what you run into, and a lot of people don't understand, is that with law enforcement, you don't have time. When you get these returns, these warrants, things like that, they're number, letters, shapes, and colors and zippers, and you're not trained in that. Not everybody's trained to know what they're looking at. So, for us, we are able to work with a group of folks that track various things from petroleum pipelines, but now they're also able to map trafficking. So what was great about this is, presenting this to an attorney, to a prosecuting attorney, an AUSA or something, how we can all kind of help is putting this in a way to where you can see it. So it paints a picture right there. What you're seeing right there is these multiple colors is a trafficker, a child, and then a what we call a bottom, which is a girl who worked, and then she got to a point in her life to where they're saying, hey, you don't want to work anymore, you don't want to do this, then start recruiting other girls. Start bringing me other girls. You start handling the girls, then you don't have to do that side of it. So you have a trafficker, you have a bottom, and then you have a victim. That's a day through the city of all the places they've taken her. So that gives you an idea. Where do you see it? This kind of, common sense in a way of where you would see these things. You can Google those things. Trauma. This is so complex. I mean, we could be on this from the mental side of it for days. Luckily, I've been blessed to where I've been trained to do forensic experiential trauma informed training, but you have to understand that why it takes Jesus, why it takes God in the center is you really have to have a love for people. And you really do. You have to see them through it, because if you don't have that strong foundation, it'll break you, because unfortunately they go back. They go back sometimes. And if you watch some of these interviews, you can watch them on Soft White Underbelly. Some of the girls even say, they go, I don't know why I went back. I just did. And you have to be prepared to continue to love on people and see them through that, right? So it's not easy. And some of that is lifelong trauma and issues, to what they've been through in their life. Same thing with kids. This is more interviewing style stuff, but just kind of gives you an overview of understanding. If you are talking to a kid, what's their home environment, their education, activities, drugs, where were they exposed to sexual things, at what age, suicide, depression, all these things, right? These are a couple of them. We don't have time to really go through them, but you can get online and you can see it shows you, you have one kid on one side that's dealt a bad hand at a very young age, and life was just, darn right hopeless for her, unfortunately, just what she had to endure. Then you've got a young lady right here that great family, father involved, went away to college, and then was tricked into thinking she was going to a modeling agency, and then got swept up into human trafficking. So it can happen. It really can. Labor trafficking stuff, to just kind of talk about some of that, as you can see, is what we kind of covered earlier. We talked about is there's job fairs, there's certain things. From one thing I've gotten to be able to do from working across the country, being an extension of law enforcement, is I've gotten to see, we have an investigation that started on the West Coast. And what they're doing is they're taking these wonderful people that come here for the American dream. It's mainly people from South America. And they take these are women that are mothers, that are wives, that are you name it, across the board, and they're bringing them in here, and they're putting them in a position to where they have no choice, or through the force, fraud, or coercion. And why it's so great, I think, with the Rotary Club is it's not just here. I had one little girl that was here one time, and I looked up in an ad, and 2 days later she was in Hawaii. So you have to understand that they're moving them around. It started off on the West Coast. A leg of it now goes down into Texas, and the majority of my victims are now all down in Florida, and they keep them moving. And that's another thing with law enforcement. It's just what it is. Their jurisdiction only goes so far. They can only do so much budget. They can't jump on a plane and take off across. So how can we get past that? What can we do? These are just things to think about, right? These are some of the complex problems with human trafficking. Again, poor conditions. These are all things you can look online. The traveling one, that was man. And the other side of it is this. From this case and what she was saying with the detective that had the 2-year case, the reality is most detectives don't have that luxury to just say, I just worked this. I think he was the only, we had one guy that was truly dedicated to working human trafficking in the whole state. And that's just the reality of things. It's, police department numbers are down, and they're working so many different things, and it's a lot. So, that's the reality of it. Working these things, it can go all the way from what, pastors, thinking they're taking kids to help them, but taking them and saying, hey, let's go sell some candy today, but then poor conditions, things of that nature. And then of course it ends up being a trafficking situation. So not to get on with a bunch of stories on everything, but I want you guys, this is from Polaris. Just quickly, you can kind of read that and you can see. This is one where we had down south, and we were lucky to partner with law enforcement. They said, look, we don't have the bodies for this. We keep getting complaints of kids coming into school. They're falling asleep. They're saying they're not going to come to school anymore. They're going to go work and make money. This is right here in America. You know, we're thinking it's all, you know, overseas. It is, but it's right here in our backyard. This is an active investigation that is in a bad way. They're now wrapping up, of course, so it's a little different to show some of this stuff to you, but just to make you kind of understand, just to put in perspective of what it can look like from an example. Little do you know, the guy that's getting these kids, these workers to come in is a Sinaloa cartel guy who's bringing them up across the border and bringing them through drug routes. I mean, we literally pulled a 13-year-old out of a chicken factory on a school night. He's working in a chicken factory. They had 10 and 12-year-olds making parts for Hyundai. Let that sink in. This is right here in America. You could see the routes, you could see the movement. You have new cartels from the Zetas to the new generation as they hold up that line. And you got to come through these traffickers if you want to come into the country. Guess what you just acquired? A lot of debt that you got to pay off. If you don't, they're gonna force you into doing these things because there's the force for article first, threat of force. Okay, you don't want to do this, you don't want to pay off this astronomical number of debt, then we're going to do something to your family back home.
Are you able to take some questions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And again, these are all just different things, but yeah, I want you guys to be able to ask questions. The illicit massage businesses, and John said, that was the last thing I wanted to hit on was the pornography side of it. There's also massage businesses that are wrecking the men and young men in our country. I investigated one that was right here and not far from this area that is tied to over 500 across the country. And you think people are going in for a massage, but it's a lot more than that. And unfortunately, the women that are doing this are forced. They don't want to do it. So with that being said, I mean, we could go on and on and on. I want to let you guys ask questions.
First, would you mind sharing that?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Jason, I know you being a police officer in Louisville Metro, my son retired from Louisville Metro. I heard that you were on the SWAT team. He was also on the SWAT team. Keith Simpson.
Yeah, I know
Keith.
Keith. Yeah, he's in
Absolutely.
Robert
My
for,
son.
yeah, great guy.
Yeah, thank you.
He was coming off the team as I was coming on, I believe.
All right,
Yeah,
perfect. Thank
working
you so much.
robbery.
But let me just share this with you. I helped design our brand new facility right up the road here. We moved in 2018. We're already 5 years into our Oldham County detention facility. And I will say this, I know Louisville Metro corrections have all kinds of issues down there. But if there are certain terms, certain words, terminology, we put a system in our facility, brand new facility, that would bring up a red flag. I'm not the jailer there. I retired last year. So I'm not the jailer now. But if you want to, I can give you somebody's name. If you want to go see the new jailer, he can tell you. So if there are certain types of words or just anything, because we're constantly reporting all inmate phones going on. But
Right.
if a certain word comes up, it throws up a red flag.
Well, and I think that's something good for everybody working together, because we're all a plethora of knowledge. And with what they do with working with victims, I mean, that's obviously the best people to ask. They're gonna tell you up to date what's going on firsthand. What are the code words? What are all the different things?
And I will go ahead and share this with you, and a lot of my fellow Rotarians have already heard. But I was there, working there for 36 years. I was the elected jailer for 30 years. And unfortunately, Louisville Metro Corrections, we know what's going on down there. But in my entire career, in custody deaths, 36 years, we only had 2.
Wow.
That is off the chart. And that takes great staff. Every time I would tell people, every time anybody ever voted for me, voting for my staff. That's what it takes. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yes, sir.
One of your slides highlighted phrase reproductive award. What is that referring?
A couple things. They could get them pregnant.
But is it getting them pregnant to sell the child?
There's a lot of sick, twisted ways. Unfortunately, people have different fetishes for different things. Maybe it's now you're psychologically like, well, I have a baby with you. Now they feel this obligation to stay because there's the connection of a child. Maybe they're doing that because they're selling somebody that's pregnant or the child, whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Is there anything in our school system?
I can answer from, on behalf of the transportation department. We go through this training every year to identify, be observant. We're dealing with kids that are elementary on up, on behavioral changes, tattoos, a lot of the things that he's covering. We go through that, actual training every single year. So think about all the eyes that are out there. I can only speak to that.
Well, and I think that's something to school board to speak with them. I know, my kids go to school out here, and I know that they had an agent from the FBI came and spoke. But I don't know what all he covered with that side of it. But what motivated me, obviously, a calling, obviously from God to step out and do what I do. But the reality is it takes time. You have to meet certain thresholds, elements of the crime before law enforcement can step in. So maybe it's something that just doesn't look right. Maybe they're not ready to go into aftercare. Maybe police aren't in a spot to where they can do anything about it. What we do is just like any concerned citizen could do, but we're comprised of a group of fellas and ladies that do this. But gather that intelligence and get it ready for when the time comes to give something to turn over to law enforcement. Yes, ma'am. Well, and it's a great question. I think more and more, and it needs to be something a little deeper and longer into what to do with it and how, and some of that has to do, it would be great with, partnering with law enforcement and talking to them about that. What would you like to see? Because unfortunately, God love them, civilians don't always know what to actually give to law enforcement. And you think it's something great, but then they're like, I can't really do anything with that. So that's a great question. I mean, the biggest thing is knowing the laws. I mean, taking the time to look at the laws, and what police will look for a lot of times is the elements of the crime. Does it meet those elements? And it's just like anything else. Can you prove those? Is there suspicion reasonable? Does a reasonable person believe there's, crime afoot? If there's, issues happening right there, we can't just say, something looked funny, he looked weird. And I think you guys just go snatch them up. It doesn't always work like that, unfortunately. So as much information you can, I mean, just, you know, maybe it's writing down what you see, a license plate, time, date, location, and that could be something that cooperates into something bigger down the road.
What I'm hearing, it sounds like the popular understanding of this issue, where there's an episode of Law and Order where in the middle of the night, the good guys kick down the door and kids run out of the evening. Sounds like a lot of times, people who are being trafficked.
A lot of times, yes, that's why I allude to having, you know, there has to be resources monetarily and resources in aftercare and, you know, all the gamut of things across the board, because they're not always ready to leave. And what, as
Up,
Chris alluded to, is the buckets of it. One of our buckets is, I use the analogy of like a hospital boat going to a third world country. If that hospital boat pulls up to the port, everybody jumps on, they get medical aid. What if that hospital boat's out here 50 yards off? Some people get there, but the majority are not. And not always can aftercare go out and be out there in those areas. And law enforcement can't just do it for the sake of it always. They're having to do other things. So where we tie into that is going out to look for those things. We see those things and putting things together that's actionable items that we can say, okay, maybe you're not ready to talk to the police yet, but you're ready to go to aftercare. Okay, you are ready to talk to the police. Okay, let's get everything you got together so we can actually give them something that they can work with. That makes sense? Hope that answered your question a little bit.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Don't go. So Jason, and Marissa and John, we want to thank you all for coming today and sharing with us. I'm going to give to John and Carissa here in just a moment. There's a coin with a four-way test on, a rotary coin. We appreciate you being here. We will also make a donation in your all's names to Polio Plus to eradicate polio around the world. We're getting real close. We appreciate you all being here. Please feel free to ask other questions, corner them if you want to, and find out what's going on. We appreciate everybody staying today and hanging on. Pick me a ticking out real quick. The color is red. Your ticket says 734. You get to spin it. 734. It's gone. I'm gonna pick another one. Don't delay. Oh my goodness. Very good. Now let's spin it away. It's $40 and she gets a whole lot of money for over 400. And if she didn't get anything, she gets a free pizza from her. So. A pizza. Hope you enjoy it. And you are free to leave. Thank you everyone for staying and supporting our speakers and being here today. We're glad you're here.
Hey, Mr. Dave, good to see you today. Good to have you out there. Hopefully we'll see you in person down the line here. Thanks, Dave.